Welcome to the Commission on Access, Success, and Excellence, CADE Spotlight. My name is Robin Parent, and I serve as the Assistant Vice President of STEM Education and DEI Officer for APLU and liaison for the CADE Commission. And I am pleased to be here today with Sam Caldwell. Sam, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the group?
Absolutely. I'm Samuel Caldwell, and it is my great pleasure to serve as the Chief Diversity Officer and Associate Vice President for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at the University at Albany, State University of New York.
Wonderful. I'm so thrilled that you're here today and to share a little bit about what you do and how that engages with the commission work at APLU. So our first question is, can you tell us a little more about what you do and what your office does at SUNY Albany?
Absolutely. So the work that the office does, I would say probably would be or could be bucketed in two different areas. One, we provide leadership, and two, we spend much of our time facilitating work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'll speak to those in that order. So the leadership that we provide is really around supporting the strategic plan of the institution. Diversity and inclusion stands as one of the pillars that we're committed to as an institution. The work is about ensuring that our work composition, our faculty and staff composition reflects that of our very diverse student body. We're also very much focused on training in the areas of bias and how bias influences and impacts the work that we do. We spend quite a bit of time also training and talking about intersectionality as well, and the different ways that we are diverse outside of what I refer to as the usual suspects around race, ethnicity, and also gender identity. So that would reflect kind of the work that we do in the leadership space, and in facilitation, we spend quite a bit of time looking to identify partnerships and collaborations that make sense for this campus, and that allows us to carry out the work that we need to do to support our students, our faculty, and our staff. And those partnerships often are within the schools and colleges. They also include external partnerships with community groups and or other entities that allow the work to be furthered.
Great. So you've given us a little bit of an overview of how the office connects with the strategic planning of the organization, the training, and the partnerships. I know you support and advance many critical initiatives across the campus.
Sure.
Is there one or two that you'd like to highlight that are meeting student needs in a unique or an impactful way?
Sure. I think the DEI, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Roundtable, which is made up of leadership across the campus. So we have leadership for those who have the benefit of positional privilege, including individuals who sit in offices such as the office that I sit in, our provost, our vice president of student affairs. And we also have, as part of that roundtable, our counterparts and other individuals who make up student leaders. So we have the elected representatives from our student association, including the DE&I chair of our graduate student association. So we're really looking to ensure that we have representation from the undergraduate population, the graduate student population, and that we're purposefully, intentionally having conversations around how we can more appropriately, more intentionally, and more impactfully support students as they're navigating this community that we have, and also that we're growing into the type of environment that we say we wish to be around being more equitable, more inclusive, both in our living spaces and in our learning spaces.
How often do those roundtables meet?
The roundtables meet several times a semester, and we spend time really focused on what types of things would help. So it's not uncommon for us to engage in stop, start, continue exercises. What types of things should we continue doing? What are we doing that really isn't delivering value? And what types of things perhaps are we taking for granted that we don't want to take for granted? We want to identify them so that we ensure that we continue to do them.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Just another follow-up question on those
Certainly.
roundtables. You said that they pulled in key players from across the institutions. How do students find out about these, and how is that engagement then sort of connect them to do they see that the way that those roundtables fit into the university's strategic plan?
Yeah, so I love the question, and I think to frame it from the perspective of students is probably the most appropriate way to engage the conversation, simply because for our students who tend to be engaged with the community and the institution, either through their experience as someone who lives on campus, so the Office of Residential Life. There may be students whose primary engagement outside of the classroom are in multicultural resource groups or student leadership groups or organizations. They may be through Greek life affiliation, fraternity and sorority life, or they may be through students who work on campus. So we try to ensure that those points of connectivity touch on all of those spaces. So whether a student is engaging traditionally through the classroom, we have representation from the academic affairs space. If we have students who are engaging in multiple ways, including leadership, including student groups, including student association or student government, all of those voices are in the room at the same time, really trying to figure out what's helping students, what may be getting in the way, and if something's getting in the way, are we thinking about it in a way that we can either push through it, navigate around it, or simply just eliminate it?
Awesome. That sounds like a really good, well-rounded way of bringing students in and sharing information back out for maximum
Absolutely.
impact. Is there another initiative that you'd like to share?
Yes, yes. So we have a bias incident response protocol that we stood up. Perhaps we're in our second year now, and the purpose of that is really to avoid what we understood were just trying to create the shortest distance between a student having an issue or concern that they believe may represent some measure of bias, and trying to help them get to resolution. So I've heard different iterations of it at different institutions. I've heard it framed as the shuffle or the handoff or something like that, where a student goes to a very well-intentioned professional for assistance, and then the guidance they're offered is, well, why don't you go to this office? Or perhaps you should go to another office. What the protocol allows us to do is to get the inquiry received, and the response team, which is made up of individuals from across campus, including the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, including university police, including student conduct, including residential life, the Dean of Students, the Office of Equity and Compliance, which deals with Title IX complaints and the like, and also HR. All of us are members of this entity. So as we get referrals, we're able to ensure that it very quickly makes its way to the most appropriate space so that the student can get a response that's timely, that's appropriate, and one where they're provided all of the options that allow for them to make a fully informed decision as to how they wish to move forward.
So is the response, is it a form that they fill out online? Is that then shared with faculty in some particular way so everyone kind of knows where it is and how to use it?
So the form can be accessed online. It can be accessed via a QR code. They can access the protocol via phone, or if they prefer to just stop in, they can do it in person. So we've tried to create as multiple mechanisms for students to be able to engage that protocol to ensure that they get to someone. And once they get to someone, we ensure that they have the ability to be communicated with as much or as little as they care to. It's not uncommon for us to receive referrals anonymously, and the individual wishes not to be contacted. And for those instances, we take what they've provided, and then we can at least look to engage someone who is perceived to be engaging in the way that runs counter to the principles of the institution.
I might have missed this. Did you say that the students serve, do any students serve on the bias board that looks at things?
Yeah, because there are referrals that include information around HIPAA considerations or FERPA considerations, we don't have students who serve on it. And we also, most of the members on it are mandatory reporters. So while we are always interested in getting the student voice, we haven't quite figured out a way to provide student representation on the board and still protect the privity of some of the information that's required in order for us to field the referral.
Makes sense. Absolutely. So you said you started this initiative about a year ago.
Yes.
Have you noticed any difference or in frequency or in use between being remote and pandemic and where you are now being back on the physical campus?
Interestingly, the numbers of referrals that we've gotten, if we were to contrast year to year, have been pretty comparable. We've received fewer in year 2 than in year 1, and we'd like to think that part of the reason for that is as we get better at a community, we would expect to receive fewer inquiries. I was surprised that for the amount of engagement that was not in person, that we were still getting a pretty consistent amount of referrals based on engagement that was virtual. So there may be instances where we're hearing from a student relative to a classroom engagement or outside of the classroom. And one other thing that I thought was interesting is the vast majority of the referrals that we receive are actually engagements among students as opposed to faculty members and or staff members to students. So very, very interesting there, and really allows for us to identify teachable moments so that we can, the feedback we get through these referrals actually inform some of the things that we probably could or should be talking about when we engage programming and when we're looking to identify training content.
That sounds like a really good feedback loop, yeah,
Sure.
for understanding. I could see where the themes probably might come up in your roundtables that you hold also
Absolutely.
for understanding.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing those two.
Of course.
And our next question, it kind of connects into, what can CADE do? So how has or how can the CADE community support you in the work that you do?
Well, one thing that I appreciate about CADE is it allows for those of us who are engaged in the work, the practitioners of the work, to be able to engage in the same space at the same time. And those opportunities tend to be all too infrequent because we tend to really be focused on trying to further the work at our respective institutions. So when we have the opportunities to share the work that's going on at a university at Albany or any of the other institutions that make up the membership, it allows us to learn from one another, which is always key and critical. It allows us to not have to reinvent the wheel because there are some things that we're thinking of or that we're trying to work through that aren't necessarily unique to our campuses. So when we're able to figure out what's working well somewhere else, it accelerates the pace at which we can navigate from where we are currently to where it is that we wish to be. And when I read the types of aspirational statements that hold for the institutions, we're all looking to get better at this work. We're all looking to create environments that are more inclusive, that are more equitable, that are marked by fewer instances where the isms are getting in the way of the work and mission of the institutions. And I think that CADE is already doing that. So for us to be able to continue to do that, and ideally to accelerate the pace at which we're doing it, is something that I'm particularly excited about.
Great. Well, I am excited about it too. Any final thoughts or comments you'd like to add today?
My final comments are really grounded in gratitude. Thank you for making an opportunity for us to be able to share today. Thank you for the great work that CADE is doing. And thank you for committing to continue to do that work into the future. It truly matters.
Well, thank you, Sam. And I know that what you share here today, I think will be helpful to the community and will likely bring in other folks of interest. And for those who might be watching and see this, you can reach out to either myself. I know Sam has offered folks to reach out to him previously. If you have questions about CADE or any of the initiatives that you heard shared today by Sam, we look forward to more and our next spotlight in a couple of months.
Absolutely. If you're considering joining CADE, please move from consideration to action. You will serve yourselves and your institution very well by doing so. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Sam. I hope you have a great day.
And you as well.